Switch Axe. Originally introduced in Monster Hunter Tri, this was Capcom's first attempt at creating a more technical weapon, with plenty of combo routes. This is thanks to its two modes of operation, but only one of which you'll ever use. Which one is it? Let's find out. Starting out with general controls in guild style. When you normally unsheath your Switch Axe, you start in Axe mode, so let's start with those attacks. Pressing X from idle makes you do the downswing, which has a very long startup but has a lot of damage and vertical reach. Press X again to perform the side slice, which is faster. You can also perform this attack from idle by pressing A, and it's also your unsheathed attack. Press X after side slice for the upswing attack. This attack has a high vertical reach, making it useful for attacking flying monsters. You can also perform the upswing attack after a forward roll by pressing X. A word of warning, this attack can launch allies, so watch where you swing that thing. You can also perform upswing from idle with the special attack button, or with X and A. After an upswing, you can opt to press X again to go back to the downswing attack, or press A to start the hack and slash combo. This is a state where you continuously swing your axe back and forth from left to right and right to left, consuming a bit of stamina after each swing. You can continue to swing by mashing A until you run out of stamina, or press X to use the downswing attack. You can also press R instead to perform the hack and slash finisher, which swings in a circle around you 3 times. Press X after this to perform the side slice. You should consider in the moment whether or not the finisher is worth it. It's got a lot of damage, but spreads its damage out over 3 hits and hits a wide area. The down slash finisher, on the other hand, is faster, but deals less damage. You can gap close in axe mode by pressing forward and X for the axe thrust, which has a long range. Finally, during a jump, you can perform a jumping axe swing by pressing X. Right, now that axe mode is squared away, we can talk about sword mode and morph attacks. Press R while idle to switch to sword mode, or press R after a downswing, axe thrust, or a hack and slash finisher to perform the morph the sword attack. You also perform the morph the sword attack while sheathed by pressing R, X, and A. Oh, and jumping in axe mode lets you do a jumping sword slash of R, morphing you to sword mode. While in sword mode, your attacks consume switch gauge, shown in the top left. If you run out of switch gauge in sword mode, you'll be forced to switch back to axe mode. While sheathed or in axe mode, the switch gauge charges over time. If you have less than 40% switch gauge, you can press R to reload and charge the switch gauge by 40%. You'll also perform this reload if you try to perform a morph the sword attack while reload is shown, so keep that in mind as you're attacking. You can also reload in mid-air by pressing R, but this locks you in place for quite a while afterwards, so you can't get away with a faster reload. The switch gauge not only allows you to use sword mode attacks, but it also applies the effects of your Switch Axe's Phial. The Phial type is shown in the equipment details. Depending on your Phial type, it grants your sword mode attacks different benefits. Some Phials will boost your element, boost your attack, or even grant your sword mode attacks new elements entirely. Keep this in mind as you're choosing which Switch Axes to make, but realistically you'll only choose Switch Axes with Power Phial for most matchups. I'll explain why much later in the Endgame Recommendations section. Let's now talk about sword mode attacks. The down slash, performed with X, shares the same animation as the morph the sword attack, but if you press forward during the attack, you also move a little bit as you perform it, which gives it a bit of utility as a gap closer. You can also press in different directions to adjust your angle during this attack. Press X again to perform the up slash, which loops back into the down slash with X. This is also performed after a forward roll with X. Press A to perform the side slash. This sweeps from left to right, which may make you hit parts you don't want to hit, but it does a bit more damage than up slash in return. Press A again to perform the double slash, which consumes the same amount of switch gauge as other attacks, but attacks twice. However, this attack has a lot of startup frames, so be confident that you'll land both attacks to get value out of this. This loops back into the side slash with A. At any time in sword mode, you can press X and A to perform the elemental discharge thrust. This thrust consumes a bit more switch gauge to perform, but initiates the elemental discharge if you mash X afterwards. This continuously deals damage, while consuming switch gauge to do so. Mashing X enough performs the elemental explosion, dealing a whole bunch of damage, consuming a bunch of switch gauge, and making you switch back to axe mode afterwards. You can also stop mashing X to just stop the elemental discharge then and there. Press A after that to immediately link into a side slash. A few things to note about the elemental discharge. The startup frames on the Elemental Discharge Thrust are cut down if you perform specifically to double slash before pressing X and A. If you press back and X during the Elemental Discharge, you also cancel the Elemental Explosion, cutting its damage a little in exchange for it coming out sooner. Also, if you run out of switch gauge in the middle of the Elemental Discharge, you won't be able to perform the explosion, and instead you'll just cancel out of it awkwardly. Make sure you have enough switch gauge before committing to it. Oh, and just because your switch axe explodes doesn't mean it deals fixed type damage. It does cutting damage. The explosion also has additional modifiers depending on the Phial type you have, shown here. You can perform a jumping sword slash in midair by pressing X, or even start a jumping elemental discharge by pressing X and A, which can be handy if you have the window for it, since it deals more damage than a grounded version. You can also do it in Axe mode. Don't forget the jumping morph to Axe with R. And finally, you can perform a morph to Axe attack after side slash or double slash by pressing R afterwards. It's just the bog standard side slice. You can also just switch to Axe mode normally with R. That's all the moves covered, so let's cover Switch Axe as a whole. Switch Axe is meant to be a weapon that can swap between higher mobility and wide reach in Axe mode, contrasting with Sword mode's ability to dump damage with its faster attacks and elemental discharge. When you actually play it though, it just boils down to reload Sword. Some people in the community disparage Switch Axe because Sword mode is just plain better, and it's because of Power Phial. Turns out that a plus 20% attack modifier in Sword mode is pretty huge. Combine that with a Hunter in this game, called Demon Rite, which boosts your Phial's effect by a multiplicative 20% while active, and basically gives you unlimited switch gauge for a short time. Well, the choice is clear. You only attack in Axe mode if something's gone off the rails, or if you're desperate to continue a good combo you got going on. This is a constant, persistent problem that Capcom's always had with Switch Axe, and judging from the newer games, this is a problem that they're just shrugging their collective shoulders at. I don't know, man. It just feels like Axe mode is a huge missed opportunity. Oh right, we're supposed to be talking about Switch Axe and how to use it well. Switch Axe encourages constant aggression and sticking to the monster as much as possible, which is difficult considering its lack of defensive options. Stay in Sword mode as much as possible, sheathing to reposition if the monster loves moving around, and occasionally applying an elemental discharge if you got the window for it. Just don't get caught out exploding your sword while the monster jumps away from it, because you'll feel real sad if you do that. Apply your X combo in shorter windows, A combos in slightly longer windows, and finish off any downs with an elemental discharge explosion when the monster goes down. If you're about to run out of switch gauge, try to find moments where you can fit in a morph to Axe attack so you aren't locked into the unmorph animation. If you're a weirdo that likes Axe mode, or if you're accidentally stuck in it because you're out of switch gauge, you should take advantage of its high vertical reach to hit tails or flying monsters, or downswing on monster head turns like a discount GS, while also gap closing with axe thrusts. Mix in a few morph to sword attacks to smoothly transition to sword mode whenever you can, or reload when you got the opportunity to do so. If you're out of switch gauge and the monster's down, toss in a hack and slash combo so you can at least get in some damage, then reload after the finisher. Let's move on to some combos now. The classic 3-stage combo is exactly what it sounds like. It uses your Axe mode X attacks: loop downswing, side slice, and upswing. This is a fine combo for stationary monsters in Axe mode, with an option to extend it with hack and slash if you have the window. Axe and slash lets you quickly go into the hack and slash from idle. Try a forward roll into an upswing, then hack and slash until the window closes, wrapping it up with a hack and slash finisher. You can optionally reload or morph the sword at the end if you need to as well, or replace the finisher with a down slash. Finally, Axe You a Question is a good gap closer that leads into sword mode immediately, letting you take advantage of certain windows. Perform an Axe thrust into a morph to sword attack. Now for some sword combos. The creatively named sword combo is either just spamming X or alternating between X and A. Alternate between down slash and side slash for higher DPS, but keep in mind that side slash's sweep can hit parts you didn't mean to, such as the Tigrex's arm. Spam X instead for slightly lower overall damage output, but higher accuracy. Elemental discharging is the down combo for when you've got plenty of switch gauge. Loop side slash, double slash, elemental discharge thrust, then mash X a few times. You don't want to explode since that'll end your combo. Instead, stop mashing and press A once your hunter pulls back on the switch axe to do a faster side slash. This is the highest sustained DPS combo that switch axe can do, so loop this on downs and explode to finish off the combo. Alright, now for some cool stuff about switch axe. You can side hop or evade for a long time after a bunch of switch axe's attacks. This fine control over your iframe timings is vital to faster hunt times. All sword mode attacks cannot bounce off of the monster. This means you can cleave through hard spots and stop your attacks to reposition much more effectively. All of your attacks also provide super armor, preventing flinches and light wind pressure from affecting you. Since your switch axe is charged at the start of the reload animation, you can cancel it if you do it just before you flinch, such as after a roar. Now let's talk about the other switch axe styles, starting with Striker. Striker loses the hack and slash finisher in axe mode, while in sword mode, it loses the double slash, so pressing A makes you use a down slash instead. You also lose the jumping elemental discharge. The elemental discharge thrust startup animation is cut short after a side slash instead, which is handy. And that's it! Aerial Style's up next. Aerial Style loses the axe thrust and the morph the sword from a downswing, but it still retains the other morph to sword attacks. Furthermore, you gain a morph to sword from upswing. In sword mode, you can't perform an elemental discharge on the ground, but when you boost jump off of monsters, you perform an aerial upslash attack automatically. Your other mid-air attacks remain the same. Switching to Adept, it loses the hack and slash finisher in axe mode, and the upslash in sword mode. Attempting to do so will make you do a side slash instead. Like aerial, upswing also links into a morph to sword. After an Adept dodge in axe mode, you can perform the Adept hack and slash finisher by pressing X. In sword mode, you can press X to perform the Adept counterswings attack. You can also morph to Axe after the counterswings attack, which performs the downswing attack. Moving on to Valor. Buckle in, this may get a bit confusing. In any state, sword mode loses the double slash from idle, making you do a down slash with A instead. Performing a Valor sheave, then pressing X in axe mode, causes you to do a Valor hack and slash finisher. In sword mode, pressing X makes you do a Valor upslash, while pressing A performs a Valor double slash. Outside of Valor state, axe mode loses the hack and slash finisher and a dumping elemental discharge. We also lose all morph attacks, meaning you can't smoothly switch to sword mode or swap back to axe mode. Performing a Valor sheave, then pressing R performs a standard Valor morph to sword. And the reverse for sword mode. You do a Valor morph to axe there instead. In Valor state's axe mode, you gain an additional morph to sword attack from side slice, and all morph to sword attacks perform a Valor heavy sword morph instead, which is a double slash. Also, you gain rapid Valor dashes in axe mode. Pressing X after one makes you perform an axe thrust instead of an upslash to boot, and pressing A makes you do a side slice instead. In sword mode, Valor state allows you to perform Valor heavy axe morph instead, launching directly into the hack and slash. You gain a morph to axe chance after both down and upslash. You also gain Valor dashes in sword mode, but they're much slower here. You can't chain them together as well as you can in axe mode. In exchange, you can press A after one to perform a Valor double slash. Finally, let's talk about the elemental discharge. In Valor state, doing a full elemental discharge performs a Valor double discharge instead, making you explode twice. Furthermore, if you have switch gauge remaining after a Valor double discharge, you remain in sword mode instead of swapping back to axe mode. Note that the double discharge does not occur if you cancel it early, so you gotta commit. You can also do a Valor heavy axe morph after you finish this, if you remain in sword mode afterwards. Alright, that was a lot, so let's summarize Valor switch axe. Essentially, outside of Valor state, it's more difficult to swap between modes, thanks to the loss of all of the morph attacks. Inside of Valor state, you gain the ability to actually switch a lot more. Ironically, this makes Valor switch axe both the most switch axe style and the least, because you can switch a lot more in Valor state, something which you don't really do in other styles. Axe mode gains a bunch of mobility thanks to the faster Valor dashes, making it your main way of getting around. Switch back to sword mode to dump damage with Valor double discharges, or mash R to spam Valor heavy morph attacks, which conserves switch gauge. Let's cover some basic Valor combos. To build up Valor gauge in axe mode while also gap closing, try the aggressive axe technique. Axe thrust, Valor sheath, Valor hack and slash finisher, optionally extending it with side slice and upswing, looping back to the Valor Sheath. Replace the axe thrust with an upswing from idle if you don't need to reposition. In sword mode, trying to do a Valor Sheath from a side slash is real slow, so do the aggressive sword technique. Down slash, Valor Sheath, Valor double slash. Replace the Valor double slash with a Valor up slash instead if you don't have the window, or loop back to down slash instead after a double slash. This combo is good for maximizing your switch gauge use if you're running near full. Once in Valor state, try using the Valor switch Tempest. In axe mode, Valor dash, axe thrust, then loop Valor heavy sword morph and Valor heavy axe morph. This deals a bunch of damage while also conserving switch gauge, useful for charging up Hunter Art gauge. Replace the hack and slash finisher with a simple down slash instead to get back to sword mode faster. You can also start this in sword mode by doing down slash from idle, or, if you need to gap close, dashing, then doing an up slash, then mash R to your heart's desire. If you've got the switch gauge, you can try the Valor double discharge spam combo. In order to loop this combo, you require Demon Right, a switch axe hunter art up. Starting in sword mode, Valor dash, then Valor double slash, launching directly into the Valor double discharge with X and A. After the explosions, mash R to get to Valor heavy axe morph, then Valor heavy sword morph. Since it's also a Valor double slash, X and A leads into another Valor double discharge if you've got Demon Ride up. You can also immediately dash to another Valor double slash instead if you don't want to combo into the morphs, or replace the hack and slash finisher with a down slash instead, then Valor heavy sword morph. Alrighty, let's cool down by talking about Alchemy style. In axe mode, pressing A after a side slice makes you do an axe thrust, and pressing A after that makes you do a morph to sword attack. In fact, you can perform morph to sword attacks with A as well as R in axe mode. While in sword mode, you can do morph to axe attacks with X instead. Basically, X is your axe mode button, while A is your sword mode button. Spamming either button will make you switch to their respective modes. In sword mode, you can't do an up slash after a down slash, but you can still do it after a forward roll. Pressing X after a down slash will make you do a side slash instead. Furthermore, you can't cancel your elemental discharge early, so you must either commit or just stop on the spot. Finally, if you try and do a morph to sword attack when you need to reload, you perform a faster reload animation that leads into the sword mode side slash. Pretty handy. Let's not forget that you can charge the alchemy barrel faster with Axe's downswing, or Sword's double slash, or that you can do an alchemy barrel sheath after any dodge, including sidesteps, with R and Y. Given how slow Switch Axe is to sheath normally, this is often a good idea. Let's see how each style fares in quality with the meta-analysis. With Switch Axe, for reasons you'll see shortly, the best styles are a tie between Striker and Alchemy, primarily because of their 3 Hunter Art slot access. Striker's loss of the hack and slash finisher is negligible, and the double slash loss, while it can be a bummer in some matchups, is an alright thing to lose. You choose Striker over Alchemy primarily for the faster HA charge, making it easier to charge Hunter Arts against monsters that dig or fly a lot, or otherwise just not letting you hit them. Alchemy is technically better than Striker, since it retains the double slash and to discharge cancel loop for higher damage, but unless you're a robot, you won't be able to spam it all the time. You also can't spam X with Alchemy, since trying to do that will make you go back to Axe mode. The faster sheath of the Alchemy Barrel sheath is also appreciated, so in the right matchups, Alchemy is fantastic. Going a step down from these two are Guild and Valor. Guild has 2 Hunter Art slots, so you have to make a painful choice between infinite switch gauge and infinite sharpness. At least you have a choice, I guess. You've also full flexibility when comboing, which is nice. Valor's access to the double discharge and the ability to spam it is pretty great, but it requires you to run a certain Hunter Art to make the most use out of it. Without it, its effectiveness is greatly reduced. It can also be difficult to juggle the Valor, Switch, and Hunter Art gauges all at once, but if you can manage all of that, you can definitely churn out a bunch of damage on the right matchups. And finally, we got Aerial and Adept. Overall, I think Adept is slightly better than Aerial, but both are hampered by the 1 Hunter Art slot limit. Unlike Valor, they also can't push out damage really fast to justify the loss of the Hunter Art slots. Adept Switch Axe at least gets a shout out for being the best style to run Axe mode with, but otherwise, Worth noting that you can run in both Axe and Sword mode, since both of the Adept attacks are pretty powerful. Link the Adept counter swings into a morph to Axe for some quick damage output. Aerial Switch Axe, on the other hand, is notorious for being a giant noob trap, because you get free damage when you jump on monsters. And since low rank makes mounting real easy, noobs tend to stick with aerial early on, then get fly swatted later on when monsters punish aerial use. On top of that, the aerial hop can be a major hindrance to fine-tune your positioning, and you're forced to hop to do a jumping elemental discharge. At least you still have a good damage option, since the jumping elemental discharge does hit harder than the grounded one. It also retains most of the guild-style combos. Still, these styles aren't necessarily bad. They're just mostly awkward because of the one Hunter Art slot limit. Alright, I've buried enough of the leads, so time to change gears to Hunter Arts. I'm going to break my usual pattern of talking about the Hunter Arts in in-game order because the context is massively necessary. Let's start off with Demon Riot, the Hunter Art that made Switch Axe go from mid-tier menace to top-tier threat single-handedly. After a brief animation, your Switch Axe goes to maximum output, causing your sword mode attacks to stop eating switch gauge with each attack. Instead, it drains over time, and prevents you from normally reloading your switch gauge. Your Switch Axe's Phial also gains a bonus modifier, depending on its base effect. The higher tier of Demon Riot you use, the more your Phial effects are boosted, but the duration changes with each tier. Tier 3 lasts as long as Tier 1, with Tier 2 lasting the longest. Note that these times are from 100% switch gauge charge, so if you use this without maxed switch gauge, your duration will be decreased. Now you may ask, okay, Demon Riot seems pretty good, but what makes it broken? The answer is energy charge. Energy charge makes you perform a reload like an Alchemy style. This reloads part of, or all of your switch gauge depending on the tier, and tiers 2 and 3 boost your affinity by increasing amounts. This is the key to making Demon Riot last longer. As long as you can stay aggressive enough to chain energy charges, you can upkeep Demon Riot for potentially the whole hunt. Unfortunately, the next two Hunter Arts aren't nearly as great, but we still gotta talk about them. Tempest Axe empowers Axe mode after 2 swings, making you move faster in Axe mode. Speeds up Axe thrust, makes the hack and slash go gradually faster after each swing, and also makes each swing cost half as much stamina. It also replaces the downswing after any hack and slash with a new Tempest Axe finisher, as long as you started to speed up your hack and slashes. Finally, let's talk about Trance Slash. Trance Slash is the longest attack Hunter Art in the game, because you perform a super long combo with it, ending with an elemental discharge. You can reorient yourself during various parts of it, allowing for some flexibility, but also a major level of risk, because you can't evade for shit during it. With Demon Riot or Tempest Axe up, you can extend the Trance Slash combo with special attacks. Oh, I should mention that if you run out of switch gauge before the elemental discharge, you end the combo early. You put in all that effort, so the least you could do is finish it off with a fancy explosion, right? We should analyze these Hunter Arts, even though I did a bit of analysis in the previous section. Demon Riot is actually god tier, as you've already guessed. You don't even need to run energy charge with it, as Valor proves with double discharge spam, boosting your power file's effectiveness even more while also letting you ignore the switch gauge for the duration streamlines its gameplay immensely. Its one issue is its massive charge time, which is more of a hindrance in Valor style since you need to line up Demon Riot's duration with your Valor state. Despite this, you shouldn't do serious hunts without it, unless you're an Axe mode shill or something. Energy charge in Demon Riot was basically mandatory in Generations, but nerfs to both Demon Riot's duration and Energy Charge's charge time made it more difficult to run without Hunter Art charge rate boosts. By itself though, Energy Charge is a fine choice, carried on the back of its affinity boost and reloading utility. On more slippery monsters, consider running Energy Charge 2 for easier uptime. Or if you're bad like me and constantly drop Demon Riot, oof. Otherwise, run rank 3. Tempest Axe exists, but unless you're explicitly playing in Axe mode all the time, or having fun with Trance Slash, this is fighting for space with Demon Riot, and it's going to lose most of the time. The opportunity cost is just gigantic, and impossible to ignore. I do appreciate the fact that this Hunter Art exists, but Power Phial and Sword Mode are over-centralizing, unfortunately. Trance Slash is the epitome of the GU classic. It's an attack hunter art that takes 5 years to actually finish, meaning that you'll probably get slapped out of it before you finish. It's a great brick, and it's kinda cool to watch, especially if you have Tempest Axe and Demon Ride up, but good luck actually using this consistently. We should move on to, well, not a happier topic, because we're talking about files in this Phial Briefing. I mentioned Switch Axe files before, so let's dive deeper into this very shallow pool. Power files are straightforward, and encompass the majority of Switch Axes in this game. While active, they boost your attack by 20%. Element files are similar. They boost your element by 25%. Next comes the weirder files. These files only come on Switch Axes with no element or status to speak of, so they gain element or status only in Sword Mode. They're also mostly self-explanatory, except for the Exhaust file. This one's unique not only because it's the only Blade Master weapon that isn't HH or Hammer to deal exhaust damage, but also because it sucks ass. Unlike HH or Hammer, Exhaust files still apply exhaust at a 33% rate, like other statuses. Sure, you can also hit the head to get KO damage, but it's also a pitifully low value. I wouldn't bother with these at all. Alright, progression time. Weapons are straightforward. Petrified at the start of low rank, then Seregius' Axe switch through the end of low rank through high rank, optionally upgrading it with high rank parts to Barox Edition. You can also keep it as Baron Defiance instead. G rank starts with the Elder Axe through G2, then in G3 switches back to the Scholarly Axe through the endgame. Switch Axe also doesn't need anything special during progression. It's the bog standard Bouja into Rathalos mix, high rank Rathalos mix, then Senator Cross. Don't need to think too hard, right? Starting out in low rank, you always run with the Petrified Axe. This thing remains solid up to Village 4 thanks to a balance of sharpness and attack power. The Yukumo Switch Axe in Village 2 comes up briefly thanks to it being your first green sharpness access, and you also gain access to Boojaboo. The Shredder in Village 3 is a fine Switch Axe if you want to tech in thunder damage, and along the same lines, the Scissor Axe in Village 4 is your water choice. Also consider picking up Senator armor as an optional side quest. In Village 5, you gain access to the Bone Axe, which crests over the Petrified Axe thanks to its higher raw and access to green sharpness. You also gain access to the Wrath Flame Splitter for fire, Mizutsune's Fond Farewell for water, and Gamif's Giant Axe for ice. I'm so glad that Capcom didn't stick Element File on it like they did for the Charge Blade. Don't forget Rathalos' armor and mix it before you leave. In Village 6, you finally gain access to Seregius' Switch Axe, Axa Switch. This progression staple from 4U returns in GU, and it's just as good here. You can take this guy all the way through to the end of high rank. Phial, Keating's Switch Axe, replaces the Shredder as your Thunder Switch Axe. This is totally skippable though, since it's only good here and in the next rank. Village 7 features upgrades to the Axa Switch, the Wrath Flame Splitter, Fond Farewell, Giant's Axe, and Phial. Though if you're going fast, it's fine to just upgrade the Axa Switch. Village 8 features more upgrades to the Axa Switch and the Wrath Flame Splitter, as well as the return of the Shredder. Also consider grabbing Senator S if you're starting to feel a lack of defense. Village 9 has Rathalos returning, which means his armor and mix set come back as well. Also, Bone Axe gets more upgrades here, upping its attack to a great 210 raw. Use it if you feel comfortable with the base green. Akhenator's Switch Axe, Fire Tempest, is also a good fire Switch Axe, but it's only really good here, so it's skippable. Fond Farewell also gains another upgrade here. Village 10 features 2 upgrade paths for your Seregius Switch Axe. Keep it at base to get to Baron Defiance, or use Hypermaterials from Hub to go over to Barox Edition. The base version has higher base attack, but only 10 white sharpness and 10% affinity, while Barox Edition's 30 white sharpness and 20% affinity can make it more comfy to run. Either are fine though. For those of you that want to clear all high rank content before moving on to G rank, you have access to Silver Rathalos' set, or Hyasol if you're really inclined to 100% the game. For weapons, we have the Hellblade Axe, which has a solid variety of stats to beat down the rest of the Deviants. For those Deviants resistant to Blast, or if you're just looking for a Switch Axe with more white sharpness for those longer fights, try the Silverwind Axe instead. It's got a longer 50 white sharpness, but trades 10 raw and Blast to do so. Here in G rank, we start off, as always, with the Elder Axe. It's got a massive 250 raw, making it worth the sketchy 10 white sharpness. G2 continues the trend with the Sage Axe, increasing it to 40 white sharpness. Though yeah, Sainator Cross is important, so get it in Gem Weakness Exploit in. Some elemental options also open up. Try Megatalon Shears for water, the Power Shredder for thunder, and Dragonstar Duna for the obligatory Lao Shenlong urgent quest. Sit at the crotch with Demon Riot up and just spam X and Striker style, you can't go wrong. In G3, we move from the Sage Axe to the Scholarly Axe. That's right, the Petrified Axe makes a comeback. Oh, and if you're curious where the Obsidian Axe is, it has Dragon Phial. That's all you need to know. The Fate of 4 also return, and with them comes upgrades to Parting Slice and the Colossus's Axe. You can also opt for Rathalos' armor and Mixet here, but if you're already in Sainator Cross, you should stick with that. In G4, the Scholarly Axe gets upgraded to the Sophos Axe, and we also get the Colossoclaw Shears and the Colossus's Axe for some elemental matchups. Endgame time. Let's start off with Switch Axe's desired armor skills. Switch Axe mostly favors the standard stuff, sharpness attacks for your weapon and basic crit skills. Where it differs is when you slot in evasion skills. Because of Switch Axe's long evade cancel frames and how often it rolls around to reposition, some people opt to take evasion +1 or evade extender. You shouldn't take both, that's kind of a waste of armor skills. I really hope you aren't running around in the slow sword mode. I will note that it isn't necessary to run evade extender in this game. Heck, I've tried playing without it and it feels fine. And it can cut into your damage output a bit if you just stick it everywhere. If you're thinking about running it, try sticking on an absolute instead before committing to it. What's more useful more generally is evasion +1. People more experienced with Switch Axe can use the long evade cancel time to precisely dodge some attacks, and running evasion +1 can help in those matchups. It's certainly not a staple in every single matchup, contrary to what some people might think, but in its niche it can be useful. Next we'll talk about good Switch Axe attributes. The number one discretionary factor for any Switch Axe is the Phial type, and fortunately this isn't complicated. Power Phial or bust. I mean, there are some matchups where Element Phial is cool, but God forbid you even take a side glance at any other Switch Axe without those phials. After that, look at sharpness. If you're playing Valor, you're gonna want to have a bunch of sharpness, since that style in particular eats up a ton of it. Otherwise, you can run with thinner sharpnesses, but it's gonna be comfy if you have more of it. Look for upwards of 30 or 40 sharpness of a sharpness grade. High Raw is great too, since you got some dual scaling going on with Power Phial. Ideally around 330, but you can work with 300 if you got Element for certain matchups. For those elemental matchups, 40 or more elements is ideal for the scaling of element phials, or if you're running Power Phial instead, around 30 is fine. Also, Deviant Boost is pretty big for any style to make Demon Riot come up faster, Energy Charge Cycle faster, and Readiness faster. It's not mandatory, as we'll find out, but it certainly helps. Your main choice for Switch Axe in Endgame is the Nat Karname from Alchemy. Nat Karname, despite not having Deviant Boost, has a good amount of purple at base, though you'll usually want to extend it with Sharpness +2 or Razor Sharp. Both of them are usually overkill. Plus, it's got a good 330 attack and triple slots for a great amount of set flexibility. Elder Frost Unleasher hits harder than a Nat Karname, but there's a catch. Even with Sharpness +2 and Razor Sharp, this weapon will usually require you to be on point with absolute readiness usage. It does hit harder than a Nat Karname with a massive 370 attack, and it's got Deviant Boost to help it out, but you can't use this with Valor style, and the low white sharpness may get you sketched out. Glaverno Axe from Hellblade Glaveness comes up occasionally against monsters weak to blast, such as Devil Joe. It's got Deviant Boost and a naturally maxed sharpness gauge, so you only need to run Razor Sharp with this guy. Another weirder choice is Crystal Beard Udagon's Switch Axe, Diamant Axe. It gives up a fair bit of power by only having green sharpness at base, but since it's got a lot of it and a huge 370 attack, the same as Elder Frost Unleasher, it's got utility by exchanging sharpness skills for Bludgeoner. It's particularly effective when you can't run readiness for whatever reason, such as when you're playing the one Hunter Art slot styles. Soul Seer Mizutsune's Lantern Light Grave is a good Switch Axe for water matchups that aren't elemental matchups. It packs a good array of stats and can run either Sharpness +2 for purple sharpness access, or Razor Sharp if you don't need it. The higher base affinity and Deviant Boost also only help. Fatalis Feint from Old Fatalis has a lot of thunder. 52! It still has Power File too, so you can use this guy against some of the more thunder-sensitive matchups, like the crabs. I recommend either Sharpness plus 2 or Razor Sharp to pay the Sharpness tax. Fatalis End, made from baseline Fatalis, is a fine switch axe for those pesky Dragon Weak matchups, but you'll need Sharpness plus 2 to get from the base blue Sharpness to the purple. Best used on matchups where you can't consistently hit weak spots and can take advantage of the Dragon weakness, such as Nakarkas. Valstrax's Magnestar Batiste is the only good element Phial switch axe, but it's only used on the elemental matchups or for bullying Rathian. Its draw, like all Valstrax weapons, is the high dragon damage, and no need for sharpness skills. From here on out, we'll cover some of the more niche choices, mainly for fun, but partially for completion. The Wrath Inferno Splitter is fine. The mandatory sharpness plus 2 and no slots is kind of a bummer, but it's got the highest raw stat line out of all the fire switch axes with power files. Speaking of fire switch axes, we have the Dread King Raffalo switch axe, the Fire Waltz axe, or Fire Element File. Despite only having 2 more element than the Wrath Inferno Splitter, it's got the highest element, and it's got Deviant Boost on top. Use Sharpness plus 2 with this guy. For Water Element File, we got the weird Wacha Naka from Kecha Wacha. It's got triple slots for extra set flexibility, and of the Water Element File switch axes, it's got the highest amount of element. This makes it a fun choice for Gravios or Basarios if you don't want to use the Dragon switch axes. Brief shout out for the Thunderlord Shocker and Amber Permafrost for being probably the best element file of their respective elements. But otherwise, I'm not going to pretend that they exist. Instead, consider using the Oppressor's Deluge for slightly higher raw over Fatalis Feint. For Ice, also try out either Behemoth's Axe for better sharpness over Elder Frosted Leasher, or Snow Baron or Espada for positive affinity at the cost of attack. Moving on to status switch axes, Gold Rathian's Harvest Moon is your poison switch axe. It's got the highest raw of all the poison switch axes, but the lowest poison. It'll at least supplement your damage with the Power File synergy. Also look at the other poison Power File switch axes. Dread Queen Cleaver for high base poison and deviant boost, or Chameleos' Zariella's Phantasm for triple slots. For Para, it'll be the weird bug switch axe, Exoskeleton Hacker. Yes, it's got really low raw, but also natural purple sharpness at base. This thing actually has some world records, but saying that this is remotely good outside of that is like saying you're the best at Smash Brothers, when you really only beat some Lucario main at your locals. Still, it's either this, or the literally cheesy switch axe, Gorgonzola Picante, which only has 5 para, so yeah, awkward. Your only sleep switch axe that has Power File is Cascade Ripidant from Plesioth, so it's the best. It's not bad either, having 28 sleep, which is the highest of the sleep switch axes. I think we'll not talk about the best of the weirder file types, because, honestly, file types are just so useless as a mechanic that I'd just be wasting your time. Amongst all the weapons that Monster Hunter has, only 3 are what I call perennial disappointments. Hunting Horn, Gunlance, and oddly enough, Switch Axe are all a part of this infamous group. Some of you who are more familiar with GU may say, but Demonite is so good that saves Switch Axe from low-middle tier. And you'd be right. But perennial disappointments aren't limited to weapons that have consistently low damage output. I also like to use it for weapons with fundamental design issues, which Switch Axe is very much a part of. Its name is never indicative of how you want to actually play it, which is just sticking to sword mode all the time without ever switching. Just rename Switch Axe to Charge Blade, honestly, because Charge Blade does far more switching and axing than Switch Axe does. And the file types are actually useless outside of the typical power and element. Like, imagine Charge Blade randomly dealing dragon damage for its file bursts. Why do this? It's literally trading out 20% attack power for random elements or status, which is thoroughly unimpressive. The switch gauge also ends up feeling like a random limitation that you only occasionally run into, especially with the existence of Demon Riot allowing you to just not give a shit. Is a weapon really fun when you feel better not having to worry about a shoehorned mechanic? I mean, just ask the Iceborne players for the answer. Overall, Switch Axe is just a disappointing weapon with so much wasted design potential for it. And judging from what Capcom's been doing in the modern games, they don't seem to view this as an issue. No, I don't count nerfing power files to be a good enough solution to this. If you make all files equal, then they're all equally inconsequential. But enough ranting about Switch Axe. GU gave Switch Axe plenty of good tools, and its styles are decently balanced across the board, thanks to both impressive hunter arts, well, really just half of them, and unique, strong mechanics for each of the styles. Granted, most of this game still focuses on sword mode, thanks to Demon Riot, but you can only ask for so much. At least Trance Slash and Tempest Axe are both fun to use as well, even if they aren't the best. And you can have fun jumping on the monster constantly with Aerial, or actually make use of Axe mode with Adept. Right, I think I've armed you with enough knowledge. Go forth and reload sword all over those monsters.